Good morning, it's Robert Starr here. If this is the first time you've heard me, I'm all about creating deeper, more meaningful patient relationships through a leverage of smart technology. I'm a second-generation pharmacist and the founder of Scripts for You, which is a new pharmacy brand in Melbourne, Victoria, and we're all about creating a fusion of old-fashioned customer service and the world's smartest technology to create the best possible patient experience. Today I wanted to talk about automating best practice. It's something that evolves every single day, and as we're working our way out of a pandemic and still having the challenges that revolve around a new normal, which is a very overused phrase, we need to be not only optimising the way our people work in our practices, but also how we can perhaps leverage technology to create best practice without having to add additional operational costs to our practice as well. In previous episodes, I've spoken about the Ironman suit for a pharmacist and what that might mean. So where I go with that particular metaphor is that technology is never going to replace a pharmacist, in my belief. And a pharmacist is never going to do as well as some of the technology can do on its own. But as a fusion together, we can create bigger and greater things and create better outcomes for our patients as a result. So the tools I'm going to talk about today are all about doing that. It needs to have a couple of key basics in place. So one of the things that we need to have are good workflows, good practices. And once we've got these in place, these tools really help to amplify what we can do. So if you think about a singer and how their voice can carry on its own a certain path and a certain level of the audience that can hear it, you give the singer a microphone, the whole room, a whole stadium, a whole world can hear them. So this is about giving pharmacists microphones to automate their best practices. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is around vaccinations. So it's something that is, some of us are seniors in it, and we're certainly aware of all of the different pitfalls and hiccups, but as our journeys with vaccination have accelerated and the volume of vaccinations have also accelerated, we need to make sure that we can get seconds back out of our workflow to make it as efficient as possible. I know a lot of concerns, particularly in our practice and everyone else's practice, is around the level of remuneration. That's one element that we can't control as pharmacists, but what we can do is we can control the cost of that particular workflow and things that we can do to streamline and help us become more efficient. And the tool I'm going to talk about today does that exact thing for us, which is fantastic. Still in its early days and infancy, but it's automating a lot of the key steps in the vaccination process. So the tool I'm talking about is one called VaxApp, V-A-X-A-P-P. It's a startup from Melbourne, so very close to where we are. The other end of the Eastlink Freeway, if you're in Victoria, these guys are based out of Ringwood. And what it originated from was looking at best practices around nurse-based clinics and how these hubs and nursing immunisation clinics could see patients in a lot more frictionless way, and so that patients could have a better experience, and that they're all about creating the best possible vaccination experience for the patient in a hybrid physical digital environment, which is something that we really love. So where it involves is from the booking process to the onboarding. I won't go through all the little details. If you want more information, please let me know and we can go in a deep dive on this a little bit later on. But it ultimately cuts out all of the extra paper and manual steps in the process. A patient can easily visit a booking calendar, book in, they can self-select all of their medical conditions that may make them eligible for different vaccinations that you offer. So you set up what your vaccine inventory is and what types of bookings you can offer. And based on their age, based on their medical conditions, it will put them into the right booking, which is a fantastic thing. And it's something that our pharmacy assistants would ultimately be doing, but it's automating that. And you can have as many people book in through that service without it tying up the phone lines, without tying up extra team in the pharmacy, which is great. The next step from there is the booking experience to the point where it's capturing payment details at the point of booking. So everything around around reducing cancellations, reducing the need to call people to see if they're coming in. All of those elements are taken care of as part of that digital experience. The pre-immunisation checklist is digitised. So as pharmacists, all we need to do is show up as the best version of ourselves and give the best possible vaccination experience in our consulting rooms, which is really what we're all about and what we probably enjoy the most out of it as well. So it allows us to see more patients. It reduces the time that we need to spend individually, and ultimately from a business point of view, that will create a greater profitability for your vaccination clinic. The next tool I wanted to talk about was an e-commerce situation. So one of the elements that frustrated a lot of us, especially when rapid antigen tests were unavailable over the Christmas and New Year, was how do we capture our patients' interests beyond just saying, check our Facebook page, we'll tell you when we've got stock, stop calling the pharmacy. It really is, there's two ways to address the problem. We can ignore it and push it to the side, or we can embrace it and capture a list of patients that were interested in that. So that was the workflow that we chose to adopt, to create a waiting list through the agency of an autoresponder program. We use a support program called Help Scout, but you could easily create the similar thing using a very easy email automation tool like MailChimp. And it's something that patients can be easily added to a form and a database so that you can communicate en masse with them as you have updates. So at the moment, we're experiencing a shortage of Ozempic, and it's a program that we've chosen to go with there as well, so that instead of having to keep telling patients, don't come in, don't come back until we say that we've got stock available, it takes that anxiety away. It's a problem that we're not simply handballing to the patient to keep calling other pharmacies. We can always, and I talk to our guys a lot about this, talk about what you can do, don't talk about what you can't do. And what we can do is we can capture interest and we can communicate effectively once we have more information. So these tools allow you to do that on scale instead of having to dedicate a person to a phone or to a text message machine on a phone through some other means to have to communicate all of that out. It can be done with one click, which is a fantastic way to look at it. The second element of that, particularly when we look back at the rapid antigen side of things, is that when stock needed to be committed to, it was scary. It was scary for everyone. The quantities, the dollar amounts that we needed to invest in our businesses for stock that we really still, even in our practice, have many rapid antigen tests left over. Thank goodness we're seeing the end of that now. But it's the ability to know that we've got paying customers that are going to pay for these rapid antigen tests. So utilising e-commerce tools, in our pharmacy we use a tool called Storby. One of the reasons I love Storby is it integrates with our point of sale, which is Z. And so if we've got stuff on hand in the pharmacy, it will tell the patient on the website that we have that item in stock, which again is very frustrating when you're offering something for sale and you don't have it in stock. So in terms of offering a narrow range of products, it's fantastic if you've got your stock on hand right. And we were able to capture interest also through Storby, but also payments automated through a payment gateway. So we used time and still use now eWay and PayPal so that those transactions could go through and we could capture payments for rapid antigen tests that were being pre-ordered as we were pre-ordering the stock ourselves, so we had a greater assurance, and it was then very easy to allocate stock and then communicate to those patients when they were available in spasmodic intervals when we were looking at receiving maybe 50 or 100 at a time. And it was a really engaged process that took a lot of time within, I'm sure, all of our practices, and it frustrated everyone to the point where we just wanted it to be over. Again, two ways to go about it. We can ignore the problem, push it to the side, and then just deal with it as it happens. I know that pharmacies would dedicate times where people would just have to show up when the order arrives, and if they missed out. But then you've got patients that work late nights, they've got kids, they can't easily become mobilised and run into the pharmacy and take advantage of stock. It really makes that difficult for them. So this really, I felt, equalised the opportunity for our patients. The third tool I was going to talk about was one where there aren't existing processes in place that help us to automate elements of it. So, for example, concession rapid antigen test program, especially when that launched, again, a lot of inquiries. We didn't have stock necessarily straight away, but people wanted to register their interest. And whilst you couldn't allocate stock to them ahead of time, you would have to wait until you have the stock to actually make sure that those patients were in your database to enable them to easily have concession rapid antigen stock allocated. Wouldn't have become possible unless there was a tool in place. And so for elements like that, and the one I would probably bring your attention to, that you need to create a form for. So it might be creating a form for vaccinations. If your program doesn't have a digital form capture possibility, you can create that using a form capture tool called JotForm. There are ways to automate that beyond there so that you can be notified when those forms are completed so that you can act on that. And it's really a way to, as scary as it may sound, create no-code programs for your pharmacy. So it's something where information goes into a form, it then gets sent to an email address or a notification program like a support program that I mentioned earlier called Help Scout, and which then becomes a universal inbox for patient communications, whether it's analog communication through the phone or digital communication through social media, through email, and even through these forms being filled out at various times. So it's something that if you've got a specific process that you know you can do well, but you need help scaling that, or you need more people helping you to manage that, you can automate that process by using a form building tool such as JotForm, which then can integrate with your other tools that you may be using too. So this is really just to give you a snapshot of what is possible in the world of automating best practice. As it always is, we evolve, we grow, and we keep testing and reiterating what we need to achieve so that the tools can keep up with all of the practices that we're engaging with. It's a very exciting time for pharmacy. Stressful, but it also, in stress, creates opportunities. I hope that's given you something. And ultimately, what I hope, and these are just some elements of our practice that we've been automating, I'd love to hear from you in terms of what things you've automated in your pharmacy, what tools have made a big difference to your pharmacy journeys, especially over the last 2 years, so that others can learn and grow their practices as a result. Have a great day. Bye for now.